So if you've already watched the sermon teaser, you know this. I'm something of a hockey fan, and I find it actually the most intense and spectator, best of the sports, but so few of us have an interest in learning it, we don't. But my favorite moment in hockey is so right in front of the goal is called the crease, and then right in back of that, in the slot, is where you want to hit an offensive player who can flip it into the goal. And if you're thinking hockey, right, so basically the hockey goalie is a tank who's about the size of the goal. So the only way to get the puck in is to find the little portions right between their legs or right between a shoulder blade and the pipe. And so you have to find the smallest of margins, which makes when that forward gets the puck right there in front of the goal, this slow motion moment where they're gliding across the ice, waiting for that hole to open perfectly, knowing that they're going to have a fraction of a second before it closes again, and quite possibly before either of those happen, someone's going to smash them from behind and they're going to taste ice, right? So there they are, purposefully, patiently looking for that window. Much as we do as we light our Advent calendars. They have a goal in mind. Elements beyond their control need to fall into place, but if they aren't ready when those other elements fall into place, they're going to miss their chance. One of my favorite reflections from Kierkegaard, and I may mention him twice today, so I apologize, is that when the wise men made it to Jerusalem to ask the authorities there, where was the Messiah supposed to be born, because his star was in the sky, they tell him in Bethlehem, but they don't go with him. As Matthew will tell that story, they know what they need to know, but they've stopped believing in it. They aren't leaning in, preparing for its coming. They have given up. Tell us if you find anything of note. That's the best they have. Our waiting and preparation in Advent runs the risk of having too optimistic of a belief that it will happen, and so we become dismayed when it doesn't, and too resigned that it will never happen, and so we're no longer looking in the sky for the signs. We no longer see or feel the wonder. We have given up. James tells us in a beautiful turn of phrase to strengthen our hearts. And I'm sitting with that language right now about what patience means if we understand patience as strengthening our heart. Knowing that it may not come this year, but that it will come. Having the faith to still believe and leaning in to that coming kingdom, waiting for just the smallest crack to open. Our hymn today, Be Still My Soul, I chose with this James text for reasons I can't remember because it was 6 weeks ago. I'm sure I got there for faithful and good and prayerful reasons. I just don't remember what they were. But what the Spirit decided was I actually wanted to talk about the hymn tune. So I'd like to give you a little bit of a history lesson. Finlandia is the hymn tune Be Still My Soul is sung to. We've, I think, talked about this already this Advent, but hymn texts are pairings of meter and tune and text, right? And so hymns of the same meter can be you can change the words to different tunes as long as they're written in the same meter. And a hymn as we know it wasn't necessarily written to the tune we know it. So you could pick up a different hymnal and sing it, and it's totally different notes. Finlandia is a hymn tune. It has no, well, sort of, dedicated text to it. We sing it actually every 4th of July Sunday because there's a beautiful piece about the pride of country, but also recognizing the pride of other people's countries, set to the tune of Finlandia, and I force us to sing it every year because Finlandia is just equivocally the best hymn tune. And if you don't know this, when I did a wedding once up in McCall, Kathy played Finlandia as my entry music on the steel drum. So it's my walk-up music, like a baseball player at home plate. Anyway, Finlandia as a hymn tune was written actually by one of the great tone poets, Jean Sibelius. He's Finnish, which means Finland, which means that country between Sweden and Russia. That's apropos to the story of what he was writing. He's a tone poet because he writes poetry with music, usually inspired by poetry of words. The poem that inspired the writing of Finlandia, Opus 29, but I could have made that up. It's written down over there. Is actually an 8-minute symphonic poem, of which the hymn tune is the last 2 minutes. Psalm's 15-second tail at the end. He wrote it off the poem by a Finnish poet called The Melting of Ice on the Ulia River. The poem is written as a protest poem of Russian occupation of Finland. Tsarist Russia, in its greatest moment of expansion, defeats Sweden and claims Finland for themselves. Here in the late 19th century, Finland is trying to get a sense of pride of their desire for their independence. The poem inspires Jean Sibelius to write Finlandia as a protest song that is going to be played at a protest rally that can't look like a protest rally or sound like a protest rally. So the original name of the piece as published was Happy Feelings Upon a Finnish Spring, because that the Russians would let them play. Finlandia, no, nationalistic, you can't play that. Happy tidings on a Finnish spring, yep, go for it. So this protest rally is happening, but it doesn't look like a protest rally, and it can't sound like a protest rally to Russian ears, but only to Finnish ears. And the 8-minute piece is played. If you were to listen to it, I commend the BBC's 100th anniversary of Finnish independence performance of it. It has a choral part, which isn't original to the text, but wonderful. It starts out with these low brass, booming and ominous, the looming threat of Russian occupation. It's dark and stormy night, if Snoopy were writing the tale. Then there's this like sort of chaotic piece that starts to build. It's the call to rise up, the call to collective action, the call to join the revolution that gets us to what Sibelius calls a divine interlude that is the hymn tune we know as Finlandia, in which you get the sense of peaceful yearning and arriving at that which you have hoped for. Can you hear in all this the Adventiness of it? Because to yearn for the freedom and arrival at independence for Finland is not different than it is for the Jews from Rome, or for us as we yearn for the kingdom as God envisioned it to break out, that lion and lamb will lay down together and a little child shall lead us. And so we too know the brooding notes of consumerism, the brooding notes of a dominance-based military world, the brooding notes of I can't look for your success because I need to hold on to what's mine. These brooding notes of the oppressive, this is the world as we know it, and it will never be better than that. And then the divine interlude of, oh yes, it can be. Sibelius writes that as a symphonic poem. He rewrites it after it has such success, clean it up, publishes it in July of 1900. 41 years later, another Finnish poet, now inspired by the music, writes another poem, 2 verses of which he convinces Sibelius to put as the choral part on the hymn tune in the last 2 verses, and it becomes the unofficial national anthem of Finland. We take that hymn tune and pull it out. It's been since set to other national anthems of other countries trying to come out from oppression, to the hymn Be Still My Soul and several other popular hymns, where what we're trying to capture is this sense of waiting but call to revolution in the same moment, right? That undercurrent of building up pride in ourselves that we deserve better than this, but also like a hockey player knowing that there are elements of that outside our control, and so we must strengthen our heart to hold until the exact moment. It's kind of like Luke Skywalker and the trench run, but I won't go there. In Be Still My Soul, the author lyrically, with the text, is grabbing some of the sentiment of Psalm 46. Be still and know that I am God, which is a reminder, right, of place. I like to say pretty regularly, there are lots of things above my pay grade, right? It does not do well to our spirits to try to control that which we can't control. There are things within our sphere of influence and things without. And much of our anxiety can come when we forget our place in the narrative. Be still and know that I, not Andrew, I am God, right? And yet, also alongside that, but be ready, right? And so the lyric author of Be Still My Soul takes the sentiments of Psalm 46, of recognizing where God is in the script, and pairs that to some of the apocalyptic imagination of Thessalonians and Revelation. In that 3rd verse, you should hear Revelation 21 saying to us, and then the home of God will be among mortals, and there will be no crying or mourning, and there will be no more tears, right? And so we have that yearning for what can be, married to the sense that much of that is outside of our control. What isn't outside of our control is our willingness to continue to train our hearts, strengthen our hearts, not to give up on that reality, and be ready to walk into it when the Magi knock on our door and say, where is the Savior supposed to be born? To strengthen our hearts to believe in each other and in the vision God has painted before us, and that this world can be good. I love that part when the beaver in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is taking the kids, says he's going to take him to Aslan. And they say, is Aslan safe? He said, safe? I never said he was safe, but he is good. Right? And so here we are, patiently, purposefully waiting. A foot in what is not yet, and a foot in what is, waiting for things beyond our control to fall in place, but ready in those moments to capture that moment with all that it could be, to strengthen our hearts. When I first moved here, we had been in the D.C. area, and then we were in the Atlanta area, and then we were in Jacksonville. So we moved to Boise, Idaho, and we chuckled at the idea that you all had traffic. Even now, when people say the traffic is heavy, I go, no, it's not. But I'll tell you, we rented a house on 26th Street, so you can do math. That's 16 blocks that way, right? 2 blocks north of State Street, and it wasn't 6 months in to being here that one day I think I probably got stopped on 23rd at a light, and I said, it's taking forever to get to work. I mean, it took 11 minutes, not 10, right? Patience is a muscle. We have to work at it, but we also have to give it a break now and then. You have to strengthen it and relax it. You have to give it a day off, and you have to use it. My favorite metaphor for that I shared at First Light is the grocery store with little children, right? It's common these days for people of a different generation to say parents just don't have the discipline anymore that they did. To which, speaking of ominous pounding, I have no idea what that sound is. But be ready. That when I went to the grocery store as a little kid, there was one toy aisle in the grocery store. Now, there's toys hanging at the beginning, middle, and end of every aisle in the grocery store. Because the powers that be know patience is a muscle. And if they make mom and dad say no 300 times, on the 301st time, they're going to be tired and say, right? Which is why I'll say, don't take your kids to the grocery store if you're already tired. It's a muscle, you're worn out, don't do it. But when you're not tired, you have to take them and be ready to say all the no's so they get to hear no. You can't just create a world in which the only thing they ever hear is yes. Balance points, right? We have to strengthen our heart to hold on to long yearning, but never give up for what we're yearning for. We stand in 2,000, 3,000 years of waiting and yearning and not giving up on a dream because the dream is worth it. And so James looks out and says, for the umpteenth millionth time, be patient. Strengthen your heart. Don't give up on compassion. And yet remember, you can only control the parts you can control. Like the prophets before you and the Messiah you follow. Like protest songs in the Finnish dark upon and awaiting a Finnish spring. We lean into the tomorrow that will be, while surviving the today that is. And we do it together, collectively, because together we can do far more than we can do alone. Do not lose heart. Strengthen yourself. Be patient. And live into the dream that is tomorrow. This is the word of our Lord.